why Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky is a very popular book. Why everywhere you go, you find about this book that that is being suggested and that is being recommended to you for reading. Why this book is very important, or why Fyodor Dostoevsky is very important. And you would see a lot of videos on YouTube talking about Fyodor Dostoevsky and Notes from Underground, and what makes this book so popular and so unique that everybody talks about. So you might have read quotes from the book, you might have read the book yourself, but what about this book that makes it great? So the so Fyodor Dostoevsky, who was this great Russian writer, he influenced even philosopher of his ideas, which was very strange because he was just a writer. He was not trained philosopher. He was not quote unquote a scholar or intellectual. He was a writer. But something about Fyodor Dostoevsky that stands out, because Fyodor Dostoevsky was trained and had education in engineering, so he was very logical and mathematical in that sense. So that makes his reasoning very rigorous and very ferocious sometimes, because he's not just a random writer. He's very well-read writer, and he has this rigorous logical reasoning about things and precisely about life. So this book is very concise, and it is one of a kind. When it was written, there was not much like that in that period, and nobody could have dared to write this book other than Fyodor Dostoevsky. It even convinced other philosophers, like I know one in particular, Friedrich Nietzsche, who was very driven, who was a great admirer of Fyodor Dostoevsky. Although he came to know Fyodor Dostoevsky much later in his life, and but this book deals with existentialism. This book, because much of the literature written at that time was very hefty, lengthy, and more of those books were adventurous. There was nothing. They could be humorous, and they were humorous, but they something like that Fyodor Dostoevsky was able to pull that at that time was is something very unique to me. That kind of literature was not popular back then. So that's so I'm why is this book great? I'm going to talk about that in a little while. So when you write as a writer, you somehow end up writing about things that happens to you in your life, because you are not completely writing fiction. There's nothing writing complete fiction. There's nothing complete fiction. Everything has an inspiration in life, in real life, and from there comes the real stuff and the real content. So everything. So it's very similar to Fyodor Dostoevsky's character, that they suffer. Somehow it is very important to him that every character suffers. And even if you have a vague idea about his other work, you would be able to relate to it a little bit, because if you have read the famous book, other famous book by Fyodor Dostoevsky, The Idiot, and the character in that book, who refers to as idiot, he has that too. He suffers, and he suffers from fits. So he suffers. So somehow it is important for Fyodor Dostoevsky's character to suffer. So it's one thing. And second is, they have existential crisis in somehow they deals with some vague, heightened consciousness and intellectuality. And this book also points that out, that intellectuality and heightened consciousness are not good thing always. So that's the other point. And second is that it somehow predicts utopian ideas and utopian political theories and political systems, and the idea that he was able to he was very he was able to predict all that. Much later, after his death, those ideas would become very popular in Russia, and those utopian ideas like communism and socialism. And Fyodor Dostoevsky was able to predict that and anticipated that, and even in this book it talks about it. And the other point in the book is that if you have all these things in your life, you know, uh, all the great things in your life, then you are not going to you are not able to grow uh, as a person. So if you take uh, if you take Fyodor Dostoevsky's life, there were a lot of difficulties in his life. His I think and his wife died at one point, so then he had to be married again. His one of his child died, and he was struggling financially all through his life. He could have gotten a job, as a well-paid job, as an engineer somewhere, but he didn't go that path, in that direction. So suffering is also important to feed Dostoevsky. It should be understood, and so also his characters. And it also talks about isolation, that the character in this book is it talks about himself being wicked, it talks about himself being sick, it talks about himself being isolated, and how he made the choice of being isolated because somehow uh, being social is not something that he crave, or something that comes naturally to him. And there is a point in this book where Fyodor Dostoevsky predicts the uh, the great egos of human, the great egos of human who have lot in society to contribute, but they have great egos, and their egos tend to justify their whole character. And it also anticipate great political egos. So this book is full of that. It's very concise, but somehow it end up predicting most of the. If you look at the political situation from 1901 to 2000, it was a great mess and chaos all around the world, especially in the first half of the last century. It was not, but it was better in the second half, but still there was a lot of chaos, and the division of Germany, the wars in Africa, the communist war fought in Eastern Europe, the communist war fought in Southern Europe, and there was this great chaos everywhere, because something about human and their egos that could be very destructive, and he talks about that too in the book. So so if when you get the time to read this book, which is a great book, I would like to recommend to you to go through this book slowly and take your time with the book, because it's so rich that every single time you would somehow it's great revolutions throughout the book, but after every single uh, chapter, it's there are I don't think there are chapter in the book. It's the parts in the book that and so the chronology of the book is parts. It's in the parts, and when you read the book, it's very revealing. It's very, but it's the one thing the great about this book is that it's very concise and concrete. It doesn't take you to some random directions to for you to, but it gives. Fyodor Dostoevsky serves everything on the platter, and that makes him the greatest of all time. And this book, one of the greatest.